and gentlemen, I'm walking out. I appreciate the memories, and goodbye.
MMA fighters rarely know when to quit. This is understandable considering the nature of the sport. This is also why fighters so often come out of retirement, because they're always left wanting more. It can be difficult for a fighter to know exactly the right time to hang up the gloves, calling a day on their career. So for this video, we'll be looking at a list of fighters who decided retirement wasn't for them. And as always, if you guys enjoy this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Now, without further ado, here's a list of fighters who didn't stay retired. Number 10. Chuck Liddell. As one of the first superstars of the UFC, former light heavyweight champion Chuck Liddell had a long and successful MMA career. After ruling over the light heavyweight division for several years, Chuck Liddell eventually lost his title and suffered a string of knockout losses. This caused him to announce his retirement in 2010.
I love this sport, and I'm excited to get go to my new stage in my life. Thank you, everybody, and love y'all.
However, this left him feeling like he had some unfinished business, especially with former rival Tito Ortiz. Liddell just couldn't resist the urge of stepping in the cage one last time to face his old foe. So in 2018, Chuck came out of retirement to fight Tito Ortiz. But being 48 years old, it was clear to everyone that age had caught up with him. He was subsequently knocked out just a few minutes into round one.
It is what it is. It happens. I mean, Tito came prepared and I lost, so it is what it is.
Number 9. BJ Penn. Former lightweight and welterweight champion BJ Penn has had quite a rough time since his UFC return. Although he teased retirement after losing to Nick Diaz, he made his retirement official after suffering a one-sided beating from Rory MacDonald. After stepping away from the competition for 2 years, the itch to return proved too much to resist for BJ Penn. He returned in 2014 to face former rival Frankie Edgar, but lost by TKO in the third round. Following the loss, BJ Penn once again decided to retire, but this time the retirement only lasted a few years, eventually returning to the UFC in 2017.
I miss being in the ring, it's the only thing that can, that kind of excitement and that kind of feeling, and that's it. It's the only way you can get it.
From there, he went on to lose his next 4 fights in a row, and to this day holds the record for the longest losing streak in UFC history. Number 8. Hoist Gracie. In 1995, UFC legend Hoist Gracie decided to take a step back from MMA. After fighting to a draw against Ken Shamrock in his 5th UFC appearance, he decided enough was enough. Following a brief absence, he returned to action, finding mixed success in both the UFC and other promotions. However, in November of 2013, Gracie confirmed to journalists that he had decided to retire from MMA for good, but the retirement proved to be short-lived. In 2016, Gracie decided to come out of retirement to face his former rival, Ken Shamrock. Although he ended up winning the fight, the win was controversial, as the replay showed Gracie landing an illegal knee strike to the groin of Ken Shamrock. Number 7. Enzo Gracie. Whilst Enzo Gracie's career may not have been as successful as his cousin Hoist Gracie, he retired on top in 2007 with wins over names like Frank Shamrock and Carlos Newton. But having never actually competed in the UFC, Enzo Gracie still felt like he had more to prove. With a desire to earn his first win inside the UFC, along with a motivation to avenge his cousin's loss to Matt Hughes, the 43-year-old announced his comeback in 2010. Facing off against Matt Hughes at UFC 112. Unfortunately, Gracie suffered the same fate as his cousin, as he fell to defeat too, this time by a third-round TKO. Number 6. Vitor Belfort. Former light heavyweight champion Vitor Belfort had fought nothing but the best during his run with the UFC. But age wasn't very kind to Vitor, and following a knockout loss at the hands of Lyoto Machida, the former light heavyweight champion decided to call it a day. However, in December of 2018, Vitor expressed his wishes to continue competing. Then, in March of 2019, it was announced that Vitor Belfort had signed a contract with One Fighting Championship and is expected to make a return later this year. Number 5. Chael Sonnen. Undoubtedly one of the most entertaining fighters in MMA, the 3-time title contender first announced his retirement prior to his fight at UFC 175. After failing an out-of-competition drug test in 2014, Sonnen was forced to serve a 2-year suspension. While serving that suspension, Sonnen was adamant during several interviews that he had hung up the gloves for good. But once his suspension was served, Sonnen instead decided to return, signing a multi-fight deal with Bellator MMA. He went on to compete in 5 fights for the promotion, before just recently announcing his retirement following a knockout loss to Lyoto Machida. Number 4. Jason Miller. Jason Mayhem Miller is someone who is no stranger to controversy. The former Bully Beatdown host and UFC fighter has had several ups and several downs during his MMA career. After rejoining the UFC in 2011, Jason Miller went on to suffer back-to-back losses. Following his second loss, Dana White decided to cut Miller from the UFC, following a bizarre backstage incident.
Then something happened here backstage after Mayhem's done. He's gone.
What happened?
Just some bullshit that I don't want to talk about.
This caused Miller to retire from MMA altogether, but his absence was only temporary, as he returned to action just 4 years later. And not only did he lose the fight by submission, he also came into the fight a massive 24 pounds over the weight limit. And it will come as no surprise that it appears now he is retired for good. Number 3. Tito Ortiz. Although former UFC light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz has announced his retirement on multiple occasions, he hasn't managed to keep himself sidelined for long. Tito first announced his retirement following his trilogy fight with Forrest Griffin at UFC 148. But it only took 2 years before Tito decided to return, signing with Bellator MMA in 2014. He went 3 for 1 under the Bellator promotion, before again retiring after his submission win over Chael Sonnen. But that retirement was short-lived as well, ending his retirement for a second time in 2018 as he took on former UFC rival Chuck Liddell. Tito won the fight by knockout and went on to announce his retirement for a third time shortly after. But once again, Tito announced in April of 2019 that he would be returning to the competition and is expected to fight later this year. Number 2. Urijah Faber. The UFC Hall of Famer is undoubtedly one of the best fighters to never hold a UFC title. Coming up short in 4 title matches, the former WEC champion decided to call it a career after his win over Brad Pickett.
I am ready to move forward and do some big things, and I feel like I've had such a great road, and thank you all for being a part of it.
But after taking a couple of years off, the urge to compete was still there. And in May of this year, it was announced that Urijah Faber had accepted a UFC fight and will be making his return on July 13th. As for the reason for his return, Urijah Faber said this.
It sounds like fun, and the reason I stopped was because I decided I wanted to, and the reason I'm coming back is because I've decided I want to.
Should he defeat his next opponent, perhaps one more title shot will be waiting for him on the horizon. Number 1. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has become notorious for announcing fake retirements. First announcing his retirement prior to his second fight with Nate Diaz, when he released a statement on Twitter saying he had decided to retire young. But that retirement was short-lived, with Conor taking back the claims almost immediately. As for the reason, Conor expressed frustration with promotional obligations leading up to the fight. He retired for a second time in March of 2019, taking to Twitter once again, this time saying he has decided to retire from the sport formerly known as mixed martial arts. The announcement came just days after being involved in a back-and-forth Twitter feud with Khabib Nurmagomedov, a Twitter feud in which Conor mocked Khabib's wife. However, just a few weeks after announcing his retirement, he released a follow-up tweet, putting the Twitter feud to rest whilst at the same time teasing his UFC return. As of now, it's unclear whether or not he'll actually return to the competition. Well, that rounds off our list of fighters who decided retirement wasn't for them. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, then please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Other than that, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.
Never have a doubt, do you like me now? Am I good enough now? Should I get more loud to get hear the fucking sound? Oh no, I'm losing my shit again, having to fit again. Man, I'm forgetting when I used to have some friends. I used to play pretend, we all grow up and then hating my phone and trends. I'm about to blow my head, nobody knows I'm dead. Fear I'm a ghost instead, think that I'm close, I get straight comatose in bed. Try to go slow with breath, breathe out my nose and head. Heart doesn't go the trend, faster it goes.